From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with OSU beat writer Scott Wright. Scott, spring football has finally started at OSU. They are definitely starting later than normal. You usually see most teams practice a couple times before spring break, but OSU decided not to. What was at play there with the decision to wait a little while?
The biggest factor of all was the recruiting angle. This is a whole new system, a whole new scheme. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going to work best on this new recruiting calendar with the early signing date. This spring is the first time that the NCAA is allowing current high school juniors to take official visits to campuses during the spring. And so Mike Gundy and his staff are trying to figure out how that's going to work, what it's going to look like at other places, how much effort are other places going to put into it. And so he thought that the best way to get a good idea of that and also to prepare his staff for the best situation is to back it up, have that spring game on the very last weekend of April, which is the last weekend that anybody is allowed to host a spring game or a spring practice at all. And not only does he get to have a look at what everybody else does leading up to that, places like Nebraska, even OU, who are having games earlier than that make a big deal of theirs, see how they handle things with recruiting. And not only that, he also gets to have the last word. He gets to be the last guy that these kids see on an official visit before they before they head off into the summer. And obviously there'll be some visits during the summer unofficially and different things like that. But as far as official visits go, those kids that come in on April 28th to Oklahoma State, that'll be the last trip that they get in the spring. Yeah,
obviously a big eye towards the future. The more immediate future, though, as it relates to the Cowboys,
yes.
A lot of questions out there, too. Let's talk on the offensive side. Clearly, quarterback is the biggest question mark. A guy that is expected to be in the mix won't be here for the spring, that being Spencer Sanders. So what can we expect to learn about the quarterback battle for the Cowboys during this spring?
Well, the important thing is to see how Taylor Cornelius takes control of this situation. If he can get a firm grasp on this job in the battle between he and Keandre Woodtee out of spring, that gives him a big advantage when Spencer Sanders and graduate transfer Drew Brown show up in June. Those guys are going to be behind the eight ball at that point. It's tough enough to come in and learn an offense in June and July and be ready to go in August to go win a job. But if there's a guy that's already taken command of that job and taken leadership of the team, really is what Mike Gundy wants to see from Taylor Cornelius, a fifth-year senior that's been around forever. Is really finally getting his first chance to insert himself into this position. They want to see him take control of the offense, be a strong leader, sort of the way that Mason Rudolph was, and you got to be able to make the throws and make the decisions, but taking control and showing his ability to run this offense and run this team in the locker room is the big thing for Taylor Cornelius right now.
I don't think there's a bigger storyline than who's the starting quarterback, but maybe trying to make a run at it is the new defense. Yep. They've got a new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles after Glenn Spencer was let go after a long run as the DC there in Stillwater. We haven't officially met Jim Knowles yet, but we know his track record. But what's sort of the expectation as far as defense goes in this spring and what they're going to be attempting to get done before the spring's out?
That's a good question. We, like you said, we haven't met Jim Knowles yet. We'll get to see him walk by a couple of times after practice. He won't be available for interviews just yet, according to Oklahoma State folks. But the things that we'll be watching for and talking to people about, trying to understand is, what happens with the linebacker position. He's going from a 4-3 to a 4-2-5. So what happens to that third linebacker position, which would be the position that guys like Calvin Bundage, Kenneth Edison Magruder played? Do those guys become safeties? Do they stay at linebacker, move to the other side? And does it change things at the middle linebacker position, which is obviously the one that was vacated by Chad Whitener's graduation? So how does the secondary come together now with a fifth defensive back? How does everything change out there? When you watch what Jim Knowles did at Duke, you see a lot more man coverage on the outside, a lot more press coverage. So that's a different type of skill for the cornerbacks to start to learn. Two returning guys that Oklahoma State really likes, and Rodarius Williams and A.J. Green, but they'll be asked to do some different things. So those will be the things that they're trying to work out and start to understand the schemes that Jim Knowles is going to install.
All right, everybody will get a look at that new defense and potentially new quarterback on April 28th. That's when the spring game is slated in Stillwater. We'll have lots of coverage before then, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.